But the beginning of the story is very beautiful. I had heard Clifford Brown originally on a record. I was in California at a place called the Lighthouse. I don't know where you're going to clap when I tell you about this. I was asked to go out there on a 6-month contract, and Lighthouse was in Hermosa Beach. This was about 1951. And a man by the name of John Levine owned the Lighthouse. And I had a good time there, even though I couldn't live in Hermosa Beach. I'll never forget Howard Rumsey riding me up and down this little beautiful enclave on the Pacific Ocean out there in California, trying to find an apartment so I wouldn't have to commute 17 or 18 miles each evening from, which amounts to about 35 miles, I guess, from L.A. out to Hermosa Beach. So finally, Mr. Levine said, "Listen, Howard, I don't know why you're taking Max up and down this area to get him an apartment, because, you know, I'm Jewish, and I had to buy up half of the goddamn town before I could get a place to live here." So anyway, I commuted, and it was a brutal 5.5 months after that. But what happened, it was very nice, and an entrepreneur by the name of Gene Norman, who had heard me out, asked me would I start a band after I finished the 6-month stint, and I said fine. And I had heard Clifford on a record with J.J. Johnson. I'll never forget that record. So I called up Clifford and asked him, I think he was working at that time around New York with people like Art Blakey. And of course, Dizzy Gillespie, I had met Clifford earlier, but really didn't pay too much attention to it in Philadelphia, because Dizzy Gillespie has a way of kind of spawning young, great trumpet players, and he introduced and talked to us about Clifford before that. But in any case, I called him up, and he said, fine, you know. And I came back to New York, and we took a plane together back to L.A. We played chess all the way, which helped kill the time. And I was impressed, because I thought I was a fairly good chess player until I met Clifford. He was about 22 at that time, about 22 years old. And we lived in the same apartment. We had a piano there, and I had a set of drums. And to show you the kind of, the things that, you know, you never can pinpoint things that really make a person as significant, which really makes a person's contributions as significant as Clifford Brown's. And but I can say this, you know, every morning when we'd get up, we'd rush, both of us would rush to the piano. And he also took an interest in playing drums. He played drums, piano, and he was constantly writing. And he had a great sense of humor as well, along with all this. And he was hard and tough. Everybody says Clifford Brown was soft, but hard and tough. Many times when we were on the road, and we'd run into situations where the money would get funny, Clifford would be just the opposite from what most of the people say about him. I mean, he was really, really, really heavy, and I wouldn't have put it past him whether he would shoot somebody, because I remember we were in Buffalo. We were in Buffalo at one point, and Buffalo during that time, as is today, a lot of the places were controlled by the syndicate. And some of them were just write-offs. If you don't know what that means, it means that they open up a lot of clubs, and they have to have some place to say, this is how we get our money. And they don't care whether the public comes in or not. And these places are managed by people who are part of the syndicate. And so the guy, at the end of the week, he came up short with the loot. Clifford went into the office, stayed for a while I was packing up my kit and everything, and when he came out with the money. And so the guy said to me, he said, you know, that's a rough little guy there. At that time, I don't know what he told him, but I know, or what happened, but I know that, and then another incident, just to give you some idea about perhaps the sense of humor he had, when Sonny Rollins joined the band in Chicago, Sonny is an authentic eccentric in the most positive sense of the word. In the most positive sense of the word. And Sonny Rollins at that time looked like a very famous baseball pitcher by the name of Don Newcomb. And so many of his closest friends elected to call him Nuke, which was the nickname for Don Newcomb at that time. And so we never knew that Sonny resented this until one day in the dressing room before we were going to hit that night. We were all around and people say, "Hi, Nuke, what you know, Nuke?" And he was looking very serious and he said, "Listen, I don't want you to call me Nuke anymore." So Brownie looked at him and said, "Well, what should we call you?" He said, "Call me Roundtree." So Clifford very quickly responded to this. He said, "Oh, I know why you want us to call you Roundtree. I read a story about a fighter who could never get past the third round, so they called him Roundtree." I thought that was clever. But Clifford has written so much beautiful music, and he was a joy to work with, and we had so much. In fact, everybody on that bandstand, he was a task master, to say the least. We rehearsed diligently, which I guess all of us do. But that particular ingredient that we find in people, and we all say, well, he's a genius and this and that, and at such a young age to have done so much musically and to have contributed so much. I've often thought about things myself and wondered, how can you possibly tell somebody what you have to do in order to acquire that, not just in music but anything else. And the things that I like, that I noticed about Clifford, he never did dissipate himself. He never engaged in any kind of narcotics or anything like that. Never even drank, in fact. I think one thing that he did do that I found out about after we had been together about a year was he loved to play the horses. Now that was a contradiction to such a clean liver. But other than the horses, I think that was the only vice he had, horses and perhaps other beautiful things. Of course, he married a very lovely lady in California, and he has a son now who must be about 25 years old, who's an electrical engineer. But it was one of the high points of my life, and I've had several, working with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Coleman Hawkins and even Duke Ellington when I was 16 years old. But that was a high point for me because it gave me an opportunity to do some of the things that I had in my mind that I couldn't do while I was working with people who were like Charlie Parker, say, for example, who dominated the bandstand, of course, as we all know, and Coleman Hawkins and people like that.